And so we took questions from another scale on place attachment. We said, isn't this place special to you? Yeah, 80% agreed or strongly agreed that this place is special. No significant difference if it was their first time visiting there. Have any of you ever been to a place for the first time you said, this is my place? Yeah, it happens. Those places are special, meaningful. So if we're concerned, we feel attached, are we willing to do something? Took some questions from another scale called norm activation. The theoretical jargon doesn't matter right now. What matters is that when people answer this question, I feel responsible for the presently occurring environmental problems. And they do, nearly 60% agree or strongly agree that they are responsible. They feel that sense of responsibility in them. We asked even specifically, do you feel responsible for contributing to the condition of the climate? Yeah, they do. So with this data in hand, we have an audience that is concerned, attached, and primed for action. So then we ask them, would you be willing to change your behavior during this visit to reduce the impacts? Yeah, everybody wants to do something. And the parks are like, yeah, what? They want to do something? So we could ban plastic bags and water bottles and straws and make people ride buses with lots of strangers that they don't know. We can get these people on bicycles. Yes, 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 yes. And it can be part of that meaningful family vacation. It can be something that they try and experiment with those friends and family members that they love, and that memory gets entrenched. It becomes part of their souvenir that they take home.
Think about climate change and climate change's impact on your future. Maybe your children's future, your grandchildren's future, your students' future. And you all hopefully can identify the feelings that you feel when you think about climate change's impact on your future. So let's zoom in a little bit more and talk about the top 10 solutions. Refrigerant management, number 1. Onshore wind turbines is number 2. Reduce food waste, because when you throw away food, when it goes into a landfill, anaerobically decomposes, and methane gas is produced. And methane, of course, is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And then we have a plant-rich diet. The good news here is that Americans are eating less meat now than they have in recent history. We're increasingly understanding that eating a plant-rich diet is not only good for our own health, but also the health of the planet. Tropical forests are really important carbon sinks, along with all of the other ecological services that they provide. And then we have educating girls, because any demographer will tell you that the longer that women and girls stay in school, the general trend is that they wait until later in life to have children, and they will have fewer children. And then those children that they have will have access to more educational resources and healthcare, and probably have higher qualities of life. In order to get there, we have to make sure that women and their families have access to family planning, so they have the children that they want when they want them. And then we have solar farms, silvopasture, which is grazing livestock in non-sensitive second growth forests, and then rooftop solar.
We're already committed to some warming based on what's happened since the end of the Industrial Revolution, but we would see a much, much weaker maximum, and also you can see leveling off already occurring. So it's a very, very different scenario, and it's why I would say it's worth, you have to look at this. It is worthwhile. Yes, there's been warming, and there probably will be a little bit more, but it would be much less than what it is for these other scenarios where there's much less effort made to try and change things. For Michigan, it's even larger. Much of the high latitudes and the mid latitudes, there's relatively more warming. This is the same type of projection for the state of Michigan, and you can see somewhere between 4 to as much as 15 or 16 degrees Fahrenheit on average. That's extraordinary. We've seen nothing like that in our record, depending on the emission scenarios. So huge projected increases in temperature in the future. One way of looking at this, looking at analogs, some of you have probably seen this, it's oversimplified, but it still makes the point. If we consider current climates, and how far would you have to go to find 10-degree warmer climate? Well, you can see you'd have to go probably all the way down to the lower Mississippi Valley or even the Southern Great Plains. And I think we can all appreciate their climate, obviously very, very different than it is here in the Great Lakes. That's a big change. It doesn't seem like that much, a few degrees, but it makes a huge, huge difference in our environment. Precipitation-related changes, most of these projections, not all of them, the majority of these suggest, at least for the next few decades, more annual precipitation, but then a leveling off and then maybe a drop towards the end of the century. One of the rubs here, the one thing I wanted to talk about was we hear the statement, both more heavy rain events and more droughts. And a lot of people say, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. And of course, physically, there's only one way that can happen. And that is, yes, maybe we have more annual precipitation, but it falls on fewer days. It's the word that needs to be used, and I'm a one-man campaigning for this, is erratic. Erratic is bad. There's unless you sell irrigation equipment, nobody else benefits from more erratic precipitation. For both natural and human systems, it's a bad thing. And unfortunately, many of these projections, that's what they suggest, especially for the middle of the century onward into the latter part of the century. So I think that's a major take home. There's also some seasonality, even for the projections that say wetter climate, most of the precipitation occurs in the cold season and is rainfall versus frozen snow or snowfall. The summers are level, and of course the summers when we need the water for all of our systems. So there's some big red flags, quite a bit of research going on in that. And so again, summarizing here, warmer and wetter historically, especially over the last half century, it's what at least is projected for the next few decades. Collectively, the issue of variability is one that we know less about. And it's one that more research is needed because it's where a lot of the impacts are. Given the projected rates of these changes in our climate, which are far beyond what happens naturally from we know the natural, so that's one difference between human-related climate change and that natural system. Our systems, our climate has to be dynamic.
Climate change is like that thief in the night that comes while we're sleeping and takes away everything that is most precious to us. Finally, we're beginning to awaken to the realities, to the truth, to the science. Although that awakening is coming slowly and it's coming with a fair amount of reluctance, but it's our children and our youth, in my opinion, who are leading us today in this dawning awareness of climate change and its impact. And your role is to give them the tools they need, the truth, the science, and to instill in them the passion and the belief that they can make a difference, that they can do anything and everything to turn this. I'm encouraged because people like you care enough to be here today. And because people like you are teaching our children and our youth the truth and the science of climate change. That gives me encouragement and hope. Dr. John Holdren said this: if we want to avoid the catastrophic effects surrounding climate change, we have got to turn this problem around now. And even since he said that, we've set records for global average temperatures in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Friends, John Holdren's challenge is directed at us. It's a challenge to how we live, how we do our business, how we respect the earth, how we value our children's children and their future, how we think, how we act, how we vote. It's easy to look at the magnitude of the challenge before us and conclude that nothing can be done to reverse this phenomena or that our small contribution doesn't make a difference. But in his powerful encyclical on climate change, Pope Francis wrote this: what would induce anyone at this stage to hold on to power only to be remembered for their inability to take action when it was urgent and necessary to do so? What would induce anyone? The Pope's words serve as a reminder to leaders at all levels of government and every nation of the world that they must not squander the important political capital that they have that they've amassed. But I would conclude that his today by saying that each of us is in a position of relative power, and thus each of us has a responsibility to act. Each of us have had our eyes open to the plight of the planet. We've heard Earth's cry. We know the historic rate of species extinction. We've seen the suffering of humanity in climate's bullseye. We can't claim ignorance, neither can we rest. Friends, we know the way to save the planet. It's up to us to go there.